I hit record because, we'll end up chatting up on some good stuff. We already done said some good stuff and I ain't capture it. So, you know, I forgot how heavy you are, sis.
Oh, I'm real heavy. You know it.
Absolutely. Light like a feather, but heavy as lead.
You know it. Fight like Mike Tyson.
There we go. There we go. You said bite like Mike Tyson?
Yes.
Right on. Right on. Yo, so thanks so much for your time. Just to agree to meet with me to record an episode for the Prison to Promise podcast. It really means a lot to me, Cierra. Though you and I have not met in person yet, I have big respect for you and the work that you're doing in the field. As you see, I don't know if you can see my eyes right now, but they're tearing up. Because I'm not serious, I'm not sincere, I'm not sad, but just really appreciative, So
Well, I'm appreciative for you. I mean, you came down here and you hit the ground running, and we appreciate that because we need all the fighters we could get. It's hard down here in the South,
Yeah, it's hard down here. And growing up north, I heard about how hard it is down here, but I never took the time to like immerse myself. But now that I'm living here and I'm immersed in the culture and I understand the history that much more, I see how days of slavery, in many regards, have not died. And a lot of these Southern folk are trying to hold on to that mentality.
And they are holding on real hard down here in North Carolina. I mean, Virginia used to be real racist, but it seemed like they are kind of shifting their mind frame to where they understand that for everybody to be happy and whole, you have to agree bipartisan. But we can't here. No, straight slave land in North Carolina.
Yeah, I'm seeing that. But yo, before we go on, I want to ask you to introduce yourself for folks who don't know who we talking to. Maybe you can tell folks just a bit, whatever you want to tell folks about who you are.
Yeah, sure, of course. So my name is Cierra Cobb. I work for Emancipate NC. I am the prison jail coordinator, family advocate, and I also run my own podcast dedicated to mass incarceration. I am indirectly impacted. My husband's currently incarcerated in North Carolina facilities for a crime he didn't commit. And so I started advocating first for him and then just kind of realized that a lot of other people were in the same situation as him. And I really didn't understand mass incarceration or anything about the legal system until I reconnected with my husband. Because I mean, when you're not directly impacted, stuff like that just it doesn't come across your radar. You're out living life doing what you're doing. And so I didn't know so many people were actually suffering. I didn't know that North Carolina was warehousing as many people who had never committed a crime, but because they were, of a different race, that they were incarcerated. And so I just started advocating. I kind of just hit the ground running when I heard about his case. And I've been doing this thing ever since. And I'm so glad that I have joined this side of the fence because it's very needed. It's a lot of people that need our help to be free and to be healthy and happy and whole because our prisons are tearing people down daily. They are warehousing communities now. So I just want to be part of that legacy that, I can say I helped free my people. I want to be the Fannie Lou Hamer.
Right on. Right on. Well, those are big shoes to fill, you know. And
Yeah.
even if you don't fill them, you're shooting for it. So you're going in the right direction, you
Most
know.
definitely.
Absolutely. So thanks for sharing that. And again, welcome to the Prison to Promise podcast. One of the things I want to ask you, because you mentioned your husband has been incarcerated. How long has he been incarcerated?
He's been in there 8 years altogether.
And what's the outlook for him coming home?
So we currently working on some things. Hopefully, we did see some things in his case. So we're working on some things. Hopefully, he will be let go soon enough, sooner than later. But you never know here in North Carolina. I mean, you could have a whole page full of why you innocent and they still want to keep you here. So
Yeah,
you just never know. You just have to keep fighting until the fight is over.
this is true. And it seems like the fight will never be over. Makes me think of something that Bob Marley said. He said, get up, stand up, don't give up the fight. Never
Right.
give up the fight. because there's always somebody after our loved ones, as you iterated earlier, who's going to need our help. So my best to your family and to your husband, with hopes that he stays strong and that you stay strong, and that he gets out of that place in better condition than when he went in, though we know that's going to be a challenge as well.
That is definitely a challenge. I mean, we know prison literally physically changes your mind, body, soul, spirit. It changes you as a person. If you didn't have mental health issues before you went in prison, you will definitely come out with some.
Yes, ma'am. I know that because I've been there, and I just talked to a brother yesterday, and he spent about 30 years of his life in and out of prison. And we were talking about, since being out of prison, so many things that have occurred to us, or just how we change as a result of being in prison, continues to be reflective in our behaviors and how we respond to people. And those people who are closest to us, they feel it the most, and we're trying to do the best for ourselves. So those of us who are coming out of prison, those of us who are in prison, we need solid supports to help us get our stuff right once we get out. So big ups to you and all other families that are supporting their people who are incarcerated.
Yeah, I mean, and it's hard. Even when you do have support, it's still hard to reintegrate back into today's society, because today's society is totally different than it was even 5 years ago. I mean, the inflation prices, and then having to go from being basically taken care of to coming out, here dealing with inflation prices and everything. That in itself is another mental challenge that you have to try to overcome, and then being labeled, and then trying to find a job, because I know a lot of people who still can't find a job. Even though we banded the box, they still can't find a job, because you still have certain people that want to discriminate because somebody has a record. So
Yeah.
Just trying to get America to stop labeling people and throwing people away in what they call cancel culture. Just canceling our people out because they have been in prison, whether they committed the crime or didn't. You still can't just cancel somebody, because everybody's human. We all gonna make mistakes. It's just about building one another up and getting us back where we need to be.
Absolutely. And the unfortunate piece is that we know that the vast majority of people in prisons are Black and brown people, more so than other people. And so I think that's just an ongoing effort to otherize us and to keep us marginalized as a group.
Yeah.
One of the things I want to ask you, though, is like, what do you think some of the most challenging aspects have been for you of having your loved one incarcerated?
I mean, it's hard not having your loved one here every day, and then you're fighting for him on top of fighting for all the millions of other people. But especially in North Carolina, we have over 30-some thousand people incarcerated. So it takes a toll, because I'm directly in contact with people that are incarcerated. I have friends that are incarcerated. And so, hearing their trauma, sometimes they just call me to vent. And so you're taking on somebody else's trauma along with your own trauma. And that could be very difficult. That could be very draining. But you gotta pour into yourself while you're pouring into other people, because if you don't pour into yourself, you can't pour into anybody else. And so it's hard, but I know that it's something that needs to be done, because you got to think about it. There's a lot of people incarcerated who have no support. They've been incarcerated for so long that family members have died off and they don't have anybody. And so, if I could give somebody that little bit of hope just by listening to what's going on in there, or just being a shoulder to lean on, or do what I can to help them be comfortable in prison, that's what I'm here to do. But it is very taxing, to least to say.
I can imagine. Because you and I are doing somewhat similar work. And then, prior to me coming to this work, I worked as a substance abuse counselor, and I worked as a reentry counselor and case manager. And so always taking on that, what they call vicarious trauma, other people's trauma, along with our own trauma, it is taxing. Two things you mentioned, though, from this point back in our conversation, you dropped the word hope at least 3 times in your conversation. And so I think hope is so important, and having the right types of supports is important to helping us maintain hope. And you also talked about being supportive for other people. What type of supports do you have, or what do you use to support yourself psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, while you're doing this work, as well as standing up for your loved one?
So I'm a very holistic person. I believe in holistic mental health. I believe in supplements. And so what I do is I do a lot of exercising. I take a lot of natural supplements. I try to eat like, wholly and nutritiously as I can. I do a lot of meditation. Meditation has helped me tremendously. I have PTSD. And so last year, like it just got so bad that my PTSD manifested seizures. And so my quality of life was, really bad on top of trying to advocate for my husband and other people. So I had to figure something out because going to doctors was not working. So I just started really tapping into my breathing and meditating and learning how to clear my mind. I started doing trauma release exercises to release the trauma I had on top of the trauma that I'm carrying from other people. And then just taking the supplements have really helped me. So I do a lot of meditation, a lot of yoga and exercising to release that energy that I tend to build up during the day, just by doing the work that I do, because like we said before, it's very taxing. So you really have to be kind and gentle to yourself, and really pour into yourself and make sure you're taking care of yourself. So that's what I do for my mental health. And then I have the support, of course, of my husband and my mom and my children, and then my colleagues that I work with. So yeah.
Dope, because I was going to ask you next, who is the community around you, but you wrapped it all in, and that's nice because we definitely need that community. We need that common unity, but that self-help, that self-care practice is so important. And I think many of us, we don't spend enough time taking care of ourselves because we're taking care of other things and other people around us, and we forget about ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
And you have to, you have to. Sometimes you have to cut it off for the day. When people are calling, sometimes you just have to cut everything off and go and be by yourself and release, all of that built up energy, because your body builds up energy due to the trauma. And when you're listening to people's situations that they're currently going through in prison, it's a lot. Like you feel for them, and it's, you feel like you're not doing enough to help them. But yeah, you have to release that built up energy that you tend to build up during the day just by working.
yeah, yeah. And I'm thinking also about how some of the work that you do could also maybe not the work, but the activities that you do can help relieve yourself of some of that stress. And you talked about like maybe exercising and meditating, et cetera, et cetera. If there's other family members out there listening to our conversation, what would be some suggestions you give to them for taking care of themselves as well as helping to support their loved one who's incarcerated?
I would say find a hobby, something that can take your mind off of the everyday stress that you go through, whether it's, just you can do mindful. You can go outside, take a walk, and just look at, the beauty of nature. You could meditate for 5-10 minutes. You don't have to sit there and meditate for 30 or 40 minutes, just a quick meditation to clear your head and clear your thoughts and kind of get your brain back flowing, take a few deep breaths, go in the bathroom, take a few deep breaths silently and release it. But yeah, just find something that makes you happy. That's what's important, is finding what makes you happy in a time where you feel like you can't find any relief, is what I would say. Just find anything, any good hobby,
Yeah,
um, is something I would say.
yeah. And you said some things that really hit for me too, like going out in nature. I love being amongst the trees, you know. It's
Mm-hmm.
just something about being in a forest or woods that just feels like therapeutic and healing, you
It's the
know.
scenery, and it's the fresh oxygen that you're getting from
Yeah,
the trees, which is,
yeah.
and your brain needs that. Like, believe it or not, when you go through the day, your body builds up a lot of stale air. And once you
Hmm.
really breathe in deep and then you let it go, like your body's releasing this stale air, it's releasing the stress. And so you're giving your mind fresh oxygen, which therefore it could, start working and being online. Because when you're traumatized, your brain works offline. It'll go offline quick. And
Real
then you
quick.
can't make conscious decisions.
That's so true because there's lots of things that happen in my own life. And sometimes I'm thinking the worst of the worst. And in many cases, it's not as bad as I make it out to be. But because of my own trauma, it shows up and it's like, we got to defend you. So look at that. That's a threat. How are we
Yep.
going to take care of that threat? We got to eliminate that threat, man. And
Yep.
it's like, a lot of times, that's not a threat, man. Just breathe, bro.
Breathe. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Mhm.
I think the Buddhists talk about that, breathing. I think they call it the pranayama, the practice of breathing.
Breathing. Yep.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
didn't understand that for the longest until I really started tapping into my breathing. And you would be surprised what it could do if you sit there and breathe in really deep and hold it in and then release it slowly. Like you literally feel the anxiety just blowing out of your body. And so, I mean, breathing is really essential. It really is.
that's true. And I think it helps to slow us down, slow down our breathing, our heart rate, slow down our thought processes, even slows down our physical movements. And I believe that when we slow down, we can make better decisions,
You
you
can.
know.
And that's why we make a lot of unconscious decisions that sometimes land us in prison because our brain is not online. So it's not able to communicate with the rest of the body. And my motto is if your brain ain't happy, your body ain't happy and it ain't healthy.
And that's the truth because it's all psychological. It's all psychological. And if we can't get our brain right, nothing else is going to be right.
Nothing. If your brain is sick, your body is sick. And that's what it is. And that's real
Yeah,
talk.
that is the truth, sis. So tell me this. What would you, I guess, or not just tell me, but tell the listeners, what would you recommend to other family members or other families who have someone going in prison? Like, how could they support their family members? What would be some good ways to support them?
Be there for them as much as you can, because like I said, a lot of them need hope, and sometimes you just being there to listen to what they're going through can help them a lot. If you can get into the movement, join some type of grassroots organization to help fight the fight, because you can never get enough fighters to fight against this systematic system that we've had for over 400 years. Slavery is not gone, y'all. It is just modernized. Chattel slavery
Yeah,
is gone, but slavery in itself has never left, and has never left the South at all. So the more people you have fighting this system, the better outcome is going to be for you, your loved one, and the community. It's not just about your loved one, but it's about the community as a whole. Because as I said before, they are warehousing our communities. They're warehousing babies and young kids, middle age, elderly. So you have to get involved in this fight. This is something that you have to do, and being supportive for your loved one as much as possible, whether that's just listening to them, because sometimes you can't always financially support them because that could literally put you in debt. I'm not saying
that's
that,
true.
but do as much as you can to be there to support them, and just listening to them. If you can take a phone call and just listen to what they're going through, and just be there for them more than anything. A lot of them just want somebody to be there. And some of them don't even have family. And I always encourage people to reach out to somebody incarcerated. Don't look at them as what the state labeled them, but get to know them as a person, because a lot of
Mhm.
these people incarcerated are traumatized, they're hurt, they have generational trauma, they have
Yeah.
trauma from the community, because a lot of
Mhm.
communities are under resourced. And
Mhm.
so the things that they have to experience is traumatic. And so
Yeah.
just being a listening ear, or just talking to them in a kind way to let them know that you understand and that you're here to do what you can to help them is very important. And that's what I would say. If you can't
Mhm.
financially support them, just support them mentally if you can.
Yeah, mental, emotional support is so important. I
Mhm.
definitely agree, because most things will pass away as far as the money is concerned. Though money gets us things that we need, but what's I think the very most important aspect of being a human is maintaining strong and supportive relationships with other human beings.
Yes.
You
Yes.
know,
If we all could support one another and love one another, man, this America would be great.
oh man, the world would be great. Come on now, you
Yes.
know. You mentioned something too, just in this last piece, and you talked about how um, our entire communities are being warehoused from the youngest to the oldest. And I learned about this sister named Dr. Karen Baptiste, and she made a documentary I have yet to watch yet, but it's called The Preschool to Prison Pipeline. So just thinking about how not just the school to prison pipeline or the community prison pipeline, but the preschool, where Black and brown children continue to be targeted and almost shuffled in a direction of failure. And we know when our children fail, they're more likely to end up in jail, prison, institutions, addiction, or early death. Heavy.
That is real heavy. It's sad that we are, and it starts when you label a child, when you say they're ADHD or they're misbehaving. That's where it starts.
Bad.
Yes, that's exactly where it starts for children, for them to be funneled into the system, labeling them, and then you get to suspending them. And so that right there in itself is funneling children into the system. Not only just that, but you have CPS that is funneling children into the system. I read an article that said over 80% of children that are involved in CPS will end up in prison. That's a high number.
That is very high. And so again, it makes me, and I say this, people who know me have heard me say this before. I'm quoting Mos Def, and he said that the killing fields need blood to graze the cash cow. It's a numbers game, but the shit don't add up somehow, And so the blood is just the bodies of these people who are coming from marginalized, under-resourced communities, and they're just being shuffled into the mouth of the system, Yeah, and the system just continues to churn in and out people, and while other people are getting rich off of our Black bodies, our brown bodies, It's horrible.
It is. But we keep allowing it because we're not being conscious. I always urge people to get into your budgets, your city budgets, your state budgets, get in and see what they're doing with the money, because you got to follow the money. You know what I mean? Yeah. We have been blinded to think that, oh, well, we pay taxes and our politicians are going to do what they're supposed to with the money. But as we see for many, many years now, they have not done what they're supposed to with the money. While they're funneling people inside of prison, they're getting rich while we are getting poor, and we're losing community members because we're not following the money. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You follow the money, you'll find the truth. But, you said, we have to educate ourselves. We have to gain knowledge. And people, I think the Bible, is it maybe in Hosea somewhere? I can't remember what it says. My people suffer because they lack knowledge.
Yeah.
And you think about what Big Mama and them said, and the old timers in the neighborhood said growing up. Don't you know better when you did something wrong? And most of the time you'll say, yeah.
Yeah.
And then they say, if you know better, then why don't you do better?
Do better, right?
So when you know better, you can do better. So we have to up our game, so to speak.
Yeah, because if we keep having this blindfold on, I'm telling you, ain't gonna be nobody out here in the community. They're all gonna be in prison. And I'm not even lying. Like, that's the way that it's literally going.
Yeah. I agree with you. And if they're not in prison, then we'll have people on the margins, either people who are trying to uphold the status quo that is being utilized to oppress people, or they'll be, I don't know, maybe strung out somewhere.
Out, probably.
Yeah, but you're not going to have too many freedom fighters out. You're not going to have too many independent Black and brown people out here, because the system continues to target us.
Day after day. And I mean, on every level, we are targeted, especially if you're poor.
Yeah. If you're poor, if you're Black, if you have mental illness, if you have disabilities, even if you're not targeted, then you're left out of the conversation. You're pushed to the outside, so you still don't get what you need. You still don't get that inclusivity,
right?
And when we're not included, and when we don't get equity, we end up falling to the wayside.
Yeah. So it's up to us. I mean, we have to do better as well. We can't expect them to do anything that's right, because they're not, as we see. They haven't done it for years. So we have to do better and get behind it.
Yeah, because our oppressors will never give us the things that we need to be free, to not be oppressed. They'll continue to give us things to oppress us, and if we don't recognize it, we'll continue to consume those things and stay suppressed.
Yes.
So that makes me think about a meme I seen online. This guy was imitating a rat, and he was talking to his other rats, and he was like, look, the homeowner left this food out for us, and it tastes pretty good. why don't you have some? And his other rats was like, I'm not sure. He was like, no, man, it's good. And as he keeps biting it, he keeps coughing.
Okay.
And the other rats are like, nah, son. And then he dies, because he thought what the homeowner left out was something for his edification. But nah, son, it's poison,
And
you
if you
know?
think about it, that's what's going on now. I mean, that's how they wrapping so many people up in the system.
Yeah,
Seriously.
yeah, yeah. It's crazy. It's really crazy.
Yeah.
So I want to jump back real quick though, and maybe ask you to talk a little bit about some of the work that you're doing. I know you've been supporting your husband, and you talked about supporting other people who are caught up in the system on various levels. But can you talk just a little more in detail about what you're doing as far as professionally around this work, around this field?
Whew, I do a lot. As I said, I work directly with the people that's incarcerated. So what I mainly do is I support a lot of the families and people that are incarcerated who are having issues inside of prison. And if they can't, if they're not being treated fairly, they come to me and I go directly to the higher ups to get things done because we know the lower staff likes to be really nasty and rude to a lot of people incarcerated. And so I am the one that goes above them and try to get things done to make sure that they are being treated fairly because I don't think that they understand they still have rights. Just because they're
Hmm.
incarcerated don't mean they don't have any human rights and that they don't have
Right.
the right to be treated with humanity and dignity.
Hmm.
So I'm there to remind them of those rights and that you still have to treat them with humanity and dignity. Um, and so I do a lot of things. People are always calling me for different things to whether their loved one is locked up and they're needing some type of guidance on what to do, or if they have, they're going through pretrial motions. A lot of them call me and ask me, what should they do about their attorney who they feel like is just not doing things that they should be doing. Um, Ooh, I do a lot. Try to think of some of the things I do. Right now, I'm currently working on abuse of power inside the prisons because we have a lot of facilities, especially Warren Correctional in particular, that I'm getting a lot of complaints about where the warden is charging people with the A99. And the A99 is a conspiracy charge. It's one of the highest charges that you can get as a disciplinary action charge inside a prison. And it's unbeatable. I don't
Hmm.
care if you plead to the higher ups, they're going to deny your appeal. And so they're using that charge to get people off the yard for complaining about what's going on or having their loved ones call up there a lot. The warden will put a charge on you, which the A99, like I said, is a conspiracy charge. And they use supposedly confidential informants to write a statement on you to say that you are bringing drugs in the system or that you're trying to put a hit out on somebody. So it's a very serious charge and it gets you demoted back into closed custody. And so I'm working on that because it's used a lot. It's used a lot so people can't even go to minimum or medium custody. And it's hard to make minimum or medium custody. To be in prison and to make those lower custody levels is amazing. And so for you to be knocked back because the warden doesn't like you, because they don't like that you're an activist, trying to make sure that your brothers and sisters that you are housed with are treated fairly, is it shouldn't be. And so I'm
Hmm.
trying to bring that to the attention of DAC that you have to hold your staff accountable. You can't expect to hold the incarcerated accountable, but you don't want to hold your staff accountable for the nasty things that they do to these people because
Hmm.
they're incarcerated. And so trying to get them to understand that you have to hold them accountable. There needs to be accountability for your staff because
Hmm.
a lot of these people come to work and they take their problems out on people incarcerated, and that's not fair to them. And so that's what I'm working on heavily right now. I work with you as far as trying to end solitary confinement because, as we
Yeah,
know, solitary confinement is destroying people. And I mean, it is breaking our people down. And North Carolina
absolutely.
loves to use that. It could be the lowest charge. You could not hear somebody. You could not hear an officer calling your name and they will charge you with the charge and put you in a hole. And sometimes they will extend that whole time for 45 days.
Yeah.
And so humans aren't meant to be isolated. at all.
The
We're not meant
social
to be in that.
creatures.
Yes, we're not meant to be isolated. And when you isolate people for 30 and 45 days and 60 days, you are literally changing their brain function. You are literally taking away their social skills. So, I work with you on that. I have the podcast going, and I made my podcast directly for people that's incarcerated and their families so that they have a safe space to tell their story, because we know that the stories that are told while you are going through your case is the stories that the state wants you to hear. You never hear the narrative of the story of the person that's being accused.
Never.
And so I made that space for them to be able to tell their story in a judgment-free, safe zone and be able to express whatever they're going through, whether it's, living conditions of the prison, whether it's the treatment of the prison, or whether they were wrongfully convicted or, unjustly sentenced. That's what that space is for. And then a lot of times I'm just there for them to vent, for them to just have somebody to talk to, because they don't have anybody to talk to. And so I'm just trying to change the prison in a better direction. I talk heavily, since you've been to Norway, I've been talking heavily about changing the culture of prison, because in order for the prison to be safer, in order for our people to be happy and healthy when they come home, if they do come home, and for the staff to be safe, the culture must change.
Absolutely.
And so I do a lot of work around just trying to get the upper part of DAC to understand you have to change your culture. You have to change the way you're doing things, because this tough on crime and being nasty to the people incarcerated is not working. It's tearing the communities down. When you let them back out, they're tore down all the way down. And it leads to them coming back. And a lot of people have been so institutionalized that they don't want to go home. And when they go home, they do things to come right back. Because they've been institutionalized for so long and used to that kind of treatment that when they come here, it's foreign land for them and they can't survive. And I need people to know that statistics say that most people that are incarcerated, their lifespan is only 10 years after they're released. 10 years.
Wow. So incarceration cuts people's lives shorter. And then just imagine if they're in solitary confinement, it will even do even more damage or cut their lives even much shorter. So something as we're coming up on our last couple of minutes together, I want to ask you to shout out your podcast. What is the name of your podcast and where can people find your podcast?
It's called Blacklight Mass Incarceration Show. We're on all major streaming platforms: Spotify, iTunes, Podbean. We're also on YouTube as well now. So check us out, like, subscribe, share. And you can find me anywhere. Just Cierra Cobb. You can go to Emancipate, and it tells you all my information. Reach out. I'm here.
Yo, that's dope. That's really dope. It's like you're all up in my head, because that was what I was going to ask you next. How can people find you? But
I'll be anywhere.
Yeah, you everywhere.
Yeah, I'm everywhere. And I also have my own nonprofit that I'm trying to get off the ground, which is going to be dedicated to mental health, self-regulating your mental health, because that's very important that we learn how to regulate our own mental health. And so we're going to be trying to do a lot of things in the prisons and the communities to heal our people and free our people. That's my goal.
Yeah. And, again, Bob Marley, I think I already quoted him, but he said in another lyric, he said, emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds.
Yes. So I'm trying to free their minds.
Absolutely. Yo, sis, I'm going to call it a wrap.
Sounds good. I appreciate you so much.
I appreciate you too. This has been dope. I always enjoy talking to you. And I look forward still to coming out your way and sitting down, having some coffee, some tea with you, some cake or something, and just chopping it up.
You know it. You know how we do.
Yeah, indeed. So, sis, once again, thank you. Thank you for being the guest, and I'm going to be in touch with you.
All right. Y'all take care. Have a good one.
Peace.